This is still a great country to do business.
The one thing that concerns me is they've attached a huge amount of importance to growth.
Europe had to make it painful for the first country to leave.
What do you look as a company and say, yes, I wouldn't mind sharing that?
I've always taken the view, if you do the right thing for customers, then ultimately...
What does retail tell you about an economy? Welcome to Talking Markets. I'm Michael Wilson. I'm joined by my old friend and also veteran city commentator David Buik. David, welcome.
Penny.
A bad penny, of course. And joined by Justin King. Now, Justin, of course, a lot of you as investors may remember him when he was CEO of Sainsbury, but that ended in 2014.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
And you do a lot of things. Obviously, a time of big political change here. You wrote, or you were quoted, as saying that you felt all the speculation about the budget was actually stopping normal sort of investment decisions. Is that, do you still feel that uncertainty right now, as far as the UK is concerned?
It's a paraphrase of something I said. I was asked a question about whether I thought the recent data on consumer confidence was related to the very downbeat narrative since the general election. And I think the answer is yes. It seems reasonably, there's certainly a correlation, and I think it's probably causal. But what I said was just like in business turnarounds, the first thing you need to do is to have a dose of reality. And whilst, are the current administration overdoing it? Probably. But are they resetting to a more realistic base? Absolutely. I think general election processes, general election years, they are a kind of bubble of fiction, aren't they? It's the current administration broadly trying to persuade us it's all gone swimmingly well and to plan, and what is now the new administration persuading us that they won't do anything terrible when they get the keys to the door. So the last 3 or 4 months, I think, have been a dose of reality, and it has impacted on consumer confidence. So the budget can't come quick enough, I think.
I can't argue with a single word you've said, but the one thing that concerns me, and I wondered whether it did you, is they've attached a huge amount of credence and importance to growth, which is great.
Yeah.
And what they need above all else is a sack full of money to come into this country for an inward investment. I would be slightly concerned that the level of taxation in certain areas might be a great disappointment to a number of people who are either here or want to come here.
Well, that narrative has been, well told, and clearly the government have heard that. They are very wary of frightening the horses, so to speak. But their inheritance is the highest tax levels that we have enjoyed, if that's the right word, in the post-war period. And public services, by common consent and starting with the NHS, pretty broken. And that's a pretty horrible combination. And if I take myself all the way back to my first period of time in Sainsbury's, the only solution to the problems it faced was to grow the top line, was to have more sales. And I think that's entirely analogous. If we don't grow our way out of this problem, the challenges of doing it any other way are really too hard to contemplate, certainly politically too hard to contemplate. So they almost have to say that we'll grow our way out of the problem. The challenge will be whether they recognise that will require them to do some things that perhaps are not typically on the agenda for a Labour government. And a kind of soak the rich narrative, which has often been the narrative of Labour administrations in the past, in a world where capital and human beings are much more mobile than they've ever been, clearly is entirely counterproductive. Yeah. And certainly we've seen in the last week or so that it appears that they are looking at numbers which remind them of that truth. And they'll need to think very carefully. I'm not, by the way, sort of anti-taxation. We should remember that the change in corporation tax was actually proposed and implemented by the last administration. At the level that it now is, it's still pretty competitive internationally. It's not at a level that would attract capital that wouldn't naturally come here. But I don't think we're a country and an economy that needs to attract capital that wouldn't naturally come here. We just need to ensure that we attract what can and will and should come here and not deter it.
Your private portfolio, if I can put it like that, is chairman of a number of companies, which are through a number of sectors. What do you look as a company and say, yes, I wouldn't mind sharing that?
Well, I'm not sure. I think like an investor, although when you're the chief executive of a public company, it kind of helps. But I've always taken the view, if you do the right thing for customers, then ultimately you're doing the right thing for investors, and that's how I come at the problem. And so, when I do in Sainsbury's each year, we'd have a graduate intake, and they'd always ask me what my career plan was, and I'd said my career plan was always only to do jobs that I thought I could do well, and do them to the best of my ability, and grab the next opportunity when it came along. And given that served me quite well in my executive career, I've kind of stuck with that in my non-executive career. So I look for a business where I think I can add real value, where I understand what I think the important dynamics are in that business to create greater success. I obviously, as a chairman, I look perhaps even harder than I ever did as an executive as the people.
I was going to say your relationship, presumably, as the chairman, as I understand it, is there to make sure that the board executes the policy of the company. So your relationship with the CEO is absolutely primary.
Vital, yeah. Although I would say that because I've tended to be attracted to situations that are stressed or in change, my chairmanships tend to be at the executive end of the spectrum, if you like. They're a little bit more
dirty
hands-on.
hands, yeah. Dirty fingernails, yeah.
Rather than just purely a kind of, I would never take a chairman's role that was really just about governance and the outward-facing side of things. So that's what I look at, and all of the businesses I'm involved in have the UK consumer, who I think I have a good feel for, at their beating heart. And I've been very fortunate, either because I inherited them or was quickly able to change the leadership teams to have very high quality chief execs in all of my businesses, which makes a chairman's life a lot easier. I had a period without a chief exec at Allwyn, the national lottery operator, and that felt more like I was the chief exec during that time. And so I tried to pick in that way, but I'm not a solid state person, so I'm always looking for change to be at the heart. So to your point about risk, I guess I have a high propensity to take on risk.
And you can listen to the full version of that podcast wherever you get your podcasts from.